Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. Salespeople tend to focus on short-term goals to the detriment of establishing long-term relationships with customers or clients. You may win the sale today, but the customer may not come back if they don't feel supported during and after the sale. That's where a customer report card might help. Roy Osing swears by it. When Roy was president of TELUS, a Canadian internet startup which grew to $1 billion in sales, he introduced the report card. Customers would rate the performance of the sales staff, and the cumulative scores would impact their commission. As a result, salespeople became less pushy and refocused their attention on the customer. As Roy tells Chris Ashmore, it's a radical shift from the more orthodox sales approach.
Traditional sales management is really all about efficiency. It's all about trying to improve the efficiency of their salespeople according to some set of doctrine that was created many, many, many years ago in terms of academics defining what efficient salespeople do. And the reality is all of the functions of sales were oriented around what I would call the push philosophy, pushing products and services, selling products and services. And so that's how salespeople were managed. How good are you at making cold calls? How good are you at spotting a good lead? Are you making your sales quotas, etc.? Okay, nothing wrong with that. That's just the way it was. The reality is, in today's world, more of sales is required. So I would define good salespeople, audacious sales managers, as having more of a strategic role, okay, as opposed to trying to encourage and teach people how to be efficient. It's more about teaching them how to be effective relative to advancing the strategic value of the company. And so the good sales managers are now moving to more of a transformational role for sales, getting them away from the past into the future where they're really viewed as more of a strategic asset and concerned with things like focusing on the long term, not annual quotas, right? Focusing on the customer relationship and building that as opposed to focusing on selling products. So that's what I would kind of say is the main difference between the two. And I'm not really, to be honest with you, Chris, I'm not really happy with the kind of progress I'm seeing out there. I mean, the majority of organizations have push salespeople, even though they will tell you that they have an objective to improve client relations, their behaviors aren't consistent with that.
Where do goals or KPIs come into sales management?
I mean, the reality here is that they need to be the right KPIs. You need to move the sales manager into a strategic mindset and then redefine the key result areas and the key performance areas that they're going to use for their salespeople. And so it's like, how do you measure building customer relationships? How do you measure adding strategic value as opposed to funnel management? And so the challenge there is that we need to move sales management away from the old ways into the new ways, which really has this kind of like strategic bent. And now let's consider what KRAs or KPIs are appropriate. And for example, what's the extent to which salespeople understand the strategic plan of the business as opposed to product sales, for example? What's the rate of retention among high-value clients? What are the behaviors that are being practiced that the customer thinks are conducive to them being loyal to the firm? All those things, they're not measured now. And if you want a strategic sales force, they need to be.
So sales managers, sales teams, they're too focused on the here and now, this week, this month, and not looking at the long term.
Yeah, they are. But you know what? It's not their fault because they're being expected to. Leadership expects them to deliver their annual quotas. So they're focused on that. Look, salespeople do what they're paid to do. I know, I had a ton of them. And you know what? All you need to do is give them the right incentive plan and they'll do it. And so, yes, they're short term. They're myopic in that sense because they're being told to do it and they're managed to do it. Their performance plan is all based on, did you make your quota? And so as long as you're getting paid to do that, sales will keep focusing on the here and now.
And they're being incentivized.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's the reward and recognition programs are all based on 12 months delivering product quotas. And so as long as you're getting paid to do that, what are you going to do? You're going to deliver your quotas in 12 months. For that to change, we need leadership to step up and declare that the role of sales needs to move from the push philosophy into a strategic role, as we just discussed.
Isn't a sense of urgency, isn't that important though in sales?
Well, it's really important, but you want them to have a sense of urgency around doing the right thing. I mean, you can quickly have a sense of urgency and a bias to act in a negative way, which isn't going to help the firm. So when I look at sales behaviors, there's a lot of the push philosophy that is not consistent with building customer relationships, that is not consistent with building customer loyalty. They're just floggers. That does not help the overall value of the organization, right? And so you want them to act quickly. It's around a new philosophy, not the old philosophy.
Mazars is an international audit, tax and advisory firm committed to helping clients confidently build and grow their businesses. Move forward with Mazars. Visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.
When you were in charge of a startup, Roy, what did you do? How did you set sales bonuses?
Yeah, so this was fun, man. You talk about liking pain. Gee whiz, trying to change this. But when I took over as president of the data and internet company, I mean, there was a traditional sales incentive plan in place. It was product-oriented, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I decided to do was introduce the relationship building piece. And so first of all, I had to define what the heck that looked like, right? So what I chose to do is I chose to have it based on customer perception. What I did was I went to the customers and I said, okay, let's define the behaviors that you would like to see from your sales force that would endear you to them. Okay. So let's talk about that. Behaviors like follow-up, proactivity, answering phone. I mean, look at really, really simple things. And so each client had a different set of behavioral expectations. That makes it kind of logistically difficult. But I started with high-value customers, like 100 and 150 of them. And I said to the sales force, okay, here's what we're going to do. Year one, 60% of your bonus will continue to be based on product sales for the next 12 months. But 40% are going to be based on how the customer perceives the behaviors that you exhibit relative to loyalty building. Okay, well, I got to tell you, the sales guys, they just went crazy over this because it was such a shift. And they said, you mean to tell me that the customer is going to determine my bonus? I said, well, part of it, that's just the way it is. So really, it's in your hands in terms of what you do about it. So we created what we call a customer report card. Every salesperson had their customers complete a report card. That report card and the results measured on poor, fair, average, good, and excellent, simple 5-score thing, they actually contribute towards 40% of the salesperson's bonus. Okay, so the first round of customer report cards, there's a lot of salespeople that ran to their caves because they couldn't believe what was going on. But you know what happened? Once they understood that this was the way of the future, they actually started to change their behavior based on the results that they got. And guess what happened? Their results improved. And guess what happened? Loyalty built and they got paid. So the second year, I said, okay, instead of 40% of your bonus based on the customer report card, 50% is going to be based on it. So I gradually increased the weighting so that I always kept the product piece, right? Because that was yesterday, that was important. And then I introduced the longer term relationship building or behaviors piece. If it was a significant contributor to us getting to $1 billion in sales, completely transformed them, made them better sales. Chris, they didn't have to sell. The customer bought. They didn't have to push. The customer trusted them and they actually bought from them. Isn't that what you want? And they stayed with us. And the one thing that came out loud and clear was they loved being part of a strategic solution for the business as opposed to just the salesperson.
That was entrepreneur Roy Osing. Business Essentials Daily is a SoundCartel podcast. Producers are Nick Schildberger, Chris Ashmore, Jeff Waters and myself. Technical production by Pete Letts. I'm Nicole Goodman. Thanks for listening. We'll bring you more B Daily next week. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.